Nobody else has come tonight, so whatever you want to say. I just kind of put us aside because my neighbors tested positive for COVID, and I didn't want to. I mean, I'm negative, but you never know. That should be-
Good, we have one. Yes.
All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Village of Altamont ZBA meeting. My name is Deborah Hext. I'm the ZBA chair. For the record, both the audio and video portions of this meeting will be recorded. At this time, would every member of our board please introduce themselves?
Barb Mulfelder.
Andrea Witham.
James Sullivan.
Bob Freeman.
We also have representing us tonight, Ginger Hanna, our planning board secretary.
Do you want the microphone closer? Or closer to you?
Gotcha, Ted. Is that better? Test, test, test. Okay. Tressa Matulowicz, our village board representative, and Allison Phillips, our counsel. The first three items on tonight's agenda are continuations of public hearings from last month. The first one being continuation of the public hearing on an application for a special use permit requested by Chris Wolf to refinish part of the basement at 982 Altamont Boulevard, tax map 48.06-3-8, to create an apartment for applicant's elderly mother-in-law. Do we have anyone that would like to speak on that particular item? No? Board, have any questions on what we've received? No? Okay. Then could I have a motion to close the public hearing?
I make that motion.
Barb?
Second.
James? Roll call, please.
Board Member Freeman.
In favor.
Board Member Mulfelder.
In favor.
Board Member Sullivan.
In favor.
Board Member Witham. In favor. And Chairperson Hecht.
In favor.
Thank you.
I've noticed that we did receive a schematic from the applicant's engineer, and it looks like we have everything on here that we had asked to show represented. The egress window, CO detectors, exits and entrances. I don't think there was anything else that we asked for. Everything looks fine to me. Does anyone have any questions on what was submitted by the engineer?
No.
Does the applicant have anything that they want to? No? Okay. Okay, then, given that, could I have a motion to approve the resolution once we read it? Do you want to read it first, or?
Sure. So this is a resolution that we prepared for the board's consideration to approve the special use
Excuse me,
permit.
Allison, can you bring the mic? Thank you.
It's like, nobody can hear it. It's like, tonight.
Whereas the zoning board of appeals for the village of Altamont received an application from Chris Wolf and Rebecca Wolf, collectively the applicant, for special use permit approval for the operation of an accessory dwelling in-law apartment at 982 Altamont Boulevard in the village's R10 zoning district. Whereas accessory apartments are permitted in the R10 zoning district by special use permit, and whereas the proposed accessory structure will be located in the basement of an existing structure and will not increase the footprint of an existing building or alter its exterior appearance. Whereas the applicant submitted an application for special use permit approval on April 7th, 2022. Pursuant to the New York State Environmental Quality Review Act, the following activities are classified as Type 2 actions and exempt from review under seeker. First one being 617.52 and then 617.511. Those subsections exempt rehabilitation or reconstruction of an existing residential structure on the same site. Whereas the applicant was referred to the Albany County ZBA pursuant to GML 239M, a public hearing was duly noticed and held on August 22nd, 2023, and continued on September 26th, 2023, at which time interested members of the public commented on the application. And whereas the ZBA has reviewed the application and comments received and duly deliberated on the application and considered the applicable standard and criteria for this application. Now therefore be it resolved that the ZBA hereby finds the proposed action is a type 2 action exempt from review under seeker. And 2, the Village of Altamont hereby approves the application for special use permit. If the board was to consider any conditions on the application, this is where you could have that discussion. In the draft, there is proposed one condition, that the applicant shall obtain any necessary approvals from the Albany County Health Department and Village of Altamont before any connections are made to Altamont water and sewer systems. Again, not clear if that's needed considering it's the existing basement.
Is that date correct?
I made that change, yeah, so I'll get that to
Oh,
the
yeah,
final.
yes.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, I think, I don't think that there's any other conditions that we wanted to have stipulated in the resolution. No? Okay. All right, then could I have a motion to approve the application and the resolution?
I'll make a motion.
Go ahead.
I'll make a motion.
Barb? Okay, second?
Sure, second.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Board Member Freeman.
Approved.
Board Member Montgomery.
Approved.
Board Member Phillips.
Approved.
Board Member Witham. Approved. And Chairperson Hunt.
Approved. Thank you. Thank you for your patience.
She'll be happy.
You just know Gary will be in touch for a building permit, right? Okay. Okay, second item on tonight's agenda that I just put to the side is an application for a variance to have a fence on the front of their property, 6-foot vinyl fence, located at 157 Bozenkill Road, tax map 37.09.1.2.2. Does anyone, public hearing is still open on this. Is there anyone that would like to comment further on that? No? Okay. No? Okay, then could I have a motion to close the public hearing, please?
I'll make that motion.
Bob?
I'll second.
Barb? Roll call, please.
Board Member Freeman.
Approved.
Board Member Montfelder.
Approved.
Board Member Sullivan.
Approved.
Board Member Witham. Approved. Chairperson Hunt.
Approved.
Thank you.
Okay, then we have a resolution prepared to approve the variance. Allison?
I can read that for the board. This is a draft resolution for the board's consideration. Resolution findings and decision on request for area variance. The Zoning Board of Appeals for the Village of Altamont received an application from Robert and Mary Beth Spring for an area variance to construct a wood or vinyl fence 6 feet in height in the front side yard of their residential property located at 157 Bozenkill Road in the village's R20 zoning district. Pursuant to Village Law 355-24C, no fence more than 3 feet high shall be permitted within a front yard, and no fence more than 5 feet high shall be permitted within a side yard. Whereas the applicant has submitted an application for area variance together with project narrative, which includes an aerial photograph, whereas pursuant to the New York State Environmental Quality Review Act, the following activities are classified as type 2 actions and exempt from review under seeker. 6 NYCRR 617.5 subsection 12 and subsection 17, which exempt the granting of area variances for a single 2-family or 3-family residence and the construction of minor accessory residential structures, including fences. Whereas the ZBA has reviewed the application and duly noticed and held a public hearing on the application on August 22nd, 2023, and continued on September 26, 2023, at which time all members of the public wishing to speak were heard. And whereas ZBA referred the application to the Albany County Planning Board pursuant to GML 239M, whereas the ZBA has reviewed and considered all public hearing comments that were received on the application, the Albany County Planning Board's response to the GML 239 referral, and additional information relevant to the application. Now therefore be it resolved as follows by the Zoning Board of Appeals of the Village of Altamont. ZBA hereby finds the proposed action is a type 2 action exempt from review under seeker. The ZBA has considered the standard for area variance contained in the Village of Altamont zoning law and hereby adopts determination and findings annexed hereto. ZBA does hereby grant the application for area variance to permit 6-foot high fence at 157 Bogan Kill Road in the front side yard location identified by the applicant. The applicant did submit with this application, our application for area variance, which filled in the 5 factors to weigh and balance for the area variance. If the board agrees with those findings, we would append that as your findings to this resolution. Unless the board has any additional conditions they'd like to impose on the approval, it can go ahead and take a vote.
I don't think I had anything as far as the variances are concerned. I know that we have, spoken with the neighbor that would be directly affected by this, and he has no problem with this going forward. So unless anyone has anything else to note, the 5 factors is, I know it's set back from the road, it's not directly on the road, and they did agree to cut down the size of the fence so it wouldn't be as visible from the road. So if the board agrees with all that, could I have a motion to, do you want me to make a motion to accept the resolution and the draft resolution and the variance, or just approve the variance?
Draft resolution to approve the variance.
Okay, all right. Then could I have a motion to accept the draft resolution to approve the variance?
I'll make that motion.
Bob?
Second.
James? Roll call, please.
Okay, Board Member Freeman.
Approved.
Board Member Molko.
Approve.
Board Member Sullivan.
Approved.
Board Member Wickham.
Approved.
Chairperson Heck.
Approved. Okay. The next topic of discussion is to continue a public hearing on the application by Patty Doak for a minor subdivision at 138 Western Avenue, tax map 37.14.2.5. One thing that we need to go through with this is seeker determination of significance.
Yeah.
So we will do that first.
I can just give a little explanation. The reason, the procedure's a little different on this application. This is an application for a subdivision approval pursuant to the Village of Altamont zoning law, New York State law. The board needs to consider and make its findings under seeker, its determination of significance before closing the public hearing on the subdivision application and deliberating on the application. The applicant has submitted a short environmental assessment form. The board has had that to review, and we have prepared a draft Part 2 EAF that we can go over now to help the board in considering its determination of significance under seeker. If the board members want to take out the Part 2 EAF, and again, this is for the short form that was submitted by the applicant. The questions correspond to the information that was provided on Part 1 of the EAF. In this draft, I have proposed answering each of these questions with no or small impact based on the information that was provided in Part 1 of the EAF. I'll also note that I also checked the parcel information on the New York State DEC Environmental Resource Mapper and came up with some additional information about the parcel. It was identified as containing or adjoining property that contains wetlands or other water bodies, archaeological sensitive areas, and listed animals or habitat. But upon further review of the maps, it's not on the property, it's on adjacent lands. So the board can consider that, and if we move on to Part 3 of the EAF, those facts are noted in the reasoned elaboration, supporting a negative declaration if that's the board's determination.
I noticed that Steve isn't here tonight, and he had noted at the last meeting that he would reach out to SHPO about the burial grounds location. Do you have an update on that? I walked back there today to try to take pictures, but it was too wet.
Roe Andrus, project manager for Walrath Surveying. Steve reached out to SHPO, and they notified him as such that they have no involvement with the state education department, the folks who had put the placard up, and that there is no record of the site being anywheres within the property of the parcel.
Do we want to get a little more clarification on that, or?
You know, typically there is a process where you can, initiate a consultation through SHPO, asking for them, to, kind of give a written statement of no effect on identified historic or cultural resources. Here, we do have, the information provided on the DEC's environmental resource mapper, and then what it sounds like was confirmed in the field that this burial site is not located on the subject property. But I understand, the concern if it is on adjacent lands. What the board, I don't want to, suggest that you put a condition on it that can't be complied with. I don't know if Steve, actually, do you know if he initiated consultation through SHPO's, online CRIS system?
I cannot confirm that, but they had spoke to, that there was essentially no need to, as it wasn't flagged on, it wasn't under any other ticket item in the registry. So,
Okay. So, I think what, what they're explaining is that Steve has reached out to SHPO, and, the response back, and I don't know if it was verbal, was that, it sounds as though, no need for further consultation because it's not, identified as being sensitive for those historical or archaeological resources. And it did come up flagged, but again, containing or adjacent to. So that's consistent with the findings in the field that it's not located on the property. If the board wants to proceed with consideration of the application tonight, it could put a condition on the approval that perhaps Steve can, submit something in writing for the record, just kind of documenting, the outreach that he did before the map is submitted for signature.
Final signature.
By the planning board chairwoman, just so that we have that for the record. But the board can proceed with, consideration of the resolution tonight with that as a final condition.
I feel that would be fair.
Yeah.
I want to take into consideration, I know we had a couple resident letters, that asked us to be sure,
If I might, if I could just throw this out there, the folks that are selling the property are basically just, they're trying to sell the property and that's it. Any building or anything like that, I don't believe is gonna be in their future, they're just selling the property. I think if something, and this is just a thought, if something was to go further, I don't think really it'd be their responsibility, but the person who purchased the property at that time, this is where we may want to, entertain, okay, you've got a historical site back there. Maybe you want to, you got to be careful of it, or whatever decisions or research has to be done on that, depending on how many houses or whatever is going to go there.
If in the future, the person who purchases the parcel isn't looking to further subdivide it, let's say they're just gonna build a single-family home on it, they wouldn't necessarily come back to this board, they would just apply to the building department for a building permit, and they would presumably get it and go out and start building. So if there, if there is a concern that, we wanna make sure that when that time does come, there's something in the record to demonstrate that, SHPO was consulted, they don't have any concerns about construction on this property causing any kind of impact. We can have that condition on the resolution, we can follow up with Steve, get that confirmation, and get it for the record before you sign the plat so that it can be filed in the county clerk's office. And that way, at least, at this point in time, we have some assurance that at whatever point in the future, when that person pulls that building permit, if it's just a single-family home, it's not gonna trigger seeker again, they're not gonna be back before this board, but there would be something in the record to demonstrate that, the, potential for, interference with any kind of historical or archaeological resources was considered at the time, and we did get assurance for the record that, they did not feel it would have any effect.
I definitely think we would want that as part of the record.
We can, if the board wants to proceed with seeker and move on to consideration of a resolution granting a conditional plat approval, we can put that into the resolution.
Yeah, I'm gonna do that,
So I guess we can start with, if the board members agree, the answers to these questions on part 2 of the short environmental assessment form 1 through 11 would be no or small impact. We can move on to part 3, but if you guys want a minute to review it and ask any questions, we can do that.
Other than, 8 and 9, which we've addressed, I don't have anything. I can attest to the fact that it's wet back there, though, because I tried to walk back there today to take pictures, and it was very wet. Anyone have any other thoughts? No? Anything else that we want to focus on further? On the first 11 in part 2? No? Okay, then I guess we can move on to part 3.
So part 3, if you flip to the next page, this is part 3, the determination of significance. I have prepared a draft reasoned elaboration supporting a negative declaration that I can read for the board if you like, Deb, just so that I can consider. So this reads, the proposed action is a 2-lot subdivision to separate a vacant 1.8 acre portion of land from an existing 2.4 acre lot located in the village's R10 zoning district. The ZBA has considered part 1 of the EAF and compared it to the information that is publicly available through the New York State DEC Environmental Resource Mapper. Upon further review, it was noted the subject property is identified as containing or adjoining property that contains wetlands or other water bodies, archaeological sensitive areas, and listed animals or habitat, the northern long-eared bat. The ZBA has reviewed this additional information and determined the proposed action will not result in any moderate or large impacts. That's the answers we had on part 2. The environmental resource mapper does not show any regulated wetlands on the subject property. Also, the applicant does not propose any new construction on the vacant parcel, and the newly created lot accords with applicable dimensional requirements. So if the board agrees with that reasoned elaboration, we would proceed with checking this box that indicates you've determined based on the information and analysis above, the proposed action will not result in any significant adverse environmental impact.
Board in agreement with that?
Yes.
Okay.
So at this point, why don't we do a motion for the record to approve the determination of non-significance, the negative declaration. So it'd be a motion to approve the issuing of a negative declaration.
Could I have a motion to approve the issuance of a negative declaration on this application?
I make a motion.
Barb? Second?
Second.
I think Allison got to you, or Allison, I think Andrea got to you first. Okay, roll call, please.
Okay, Board Member Freeman.
Approved.
Board Member Mulcom.
Approved.
Board Member Sullivan.
Approved?
Board Member Whitcomb.
Approved.
And Chairperson Heck.
In favor.
Thank you.
Now, now that the board has adopted its determination of significance under seeker, you can continue with the public hearing, and if there's no additional comments, the board can consider a motion to close.
Okay, anyone else have any other comments as it relates to this application?
Ted Newman on Lark Street in Altamont. I was just wondering if an application for building on this property comes up and they start digging on it and they do discover the grave, then what happens?
If the contractors were at the site and started to dig and encountered human remains, they would be required to stop work and to notify the relevant authorities.
And then what?
Then it would be determined, by specialists, either through the New York State Educational Department or the local police, as to whether or not those remains were of any kind of historical or archaeological significance.
Would they stop building or they would just move them?
It depends. If they were considered, if they were not of any kind of archaeological or historic significance, it would be a crime scene. If they were determined to be of an age of some kind of archaeological significance, my understanding is that the State Education Department would assemble a crew who would be able to remove the remains to a point where work could continue on the property.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Ted.
But based on what we heard last meeting from Steve, right, that the site is well marked on the adjacent property.
Yeah, and it's
So
not on the property.
Right, but it's
Right.
well marked, what is the grave site?
Yeah,
Correct.
there are stones there,
So we're to believe
markers.
reasonably that it was checked by whoever put the sign there originally, that was the site, in fact.
Well, and if we have confirmation, if you want to come up and add, if we have confirmation from the applicant's consultant based on a field investigation, would like to document that.
That's right, I can clarify, the burial site is well off of the parcel, and the name on the placard that you see on Western Avenue is the same that are on the gravestones. Again, a ways off of the Dokes property, so.
Thank you.
And I guess the reason that the placard was put there, at the time, was because they wanted people to be able to see it, and they wouldn't see it if it was put back where the site is. And from my understanding, it's not on the property, it's whomever owns the group home's property, that's where that marker is. So, I guess they were surprised that their property even went back that far. So, it's not on the property that's looking to be subdivided. Okay, anyone else? Okay, then could I have a motion to close the public hearing?
I make the motion.
Barb?
Second.
Bob? Roll call, please.
Board Member Freeman.
Approved.
Board Member Mulfelder.
Approved.
Board Member Sullivan.
Approved?
Board Member Whitcomb.
Approved.
And Chairperson Heck.
In favor. Then we can go forward to the resolution with the one condition that we get something in writing.
Yes. So you have before you a draft resolution approving a final subdivision plat. The resolution recites, whereas Patricia Doak, as co-trustee of the Normans H. Holt Irrevocable Trust, dated July 20th, 2007, has submitted a concept plan for a two-lot subdivision of land located at 138 Western Avenue, Village of Altamont. The proposed subdivision is located in the village's R20 zoning district. The applicant has submitted a proposed plat together with short environmental assessment form describing the action as a two-lot subdivision to separate 1.8 acres of vacant land from the existing 2.4 acre lot. And whereas the ZBA has reviewed Part 2 of the short EAF and did not identify any moderate to large impacts from the proposed action and proceeded to adopt a negative declaration, thereby completing its seeker review for the project. And whereas the proposed subdivision was referred to the Albany County Planning Department pursuant to GML 239N, and whereas the ZBA duly noticed and held a public hearing on the proposed final plat on September 26, 2023, at which time all interested members of the public were heard. And whereas the ZBA has reviewed the application and comments provided at the public hearing and duly deliberated on the application and considered the criteria and standards for subdivision approval. Now therefore be it resolved that the ZBA of the Village of Altamont hereby grants final plat approval, subject to the following conditions. One proposed condition that I have here is that a curb cut must be approved prior to the issuance of any building permits for construction on the newly created lot. And then second, the board, I think I heard earlier, wants to consider a condition to require confirmation, we'll say written confirmation, that the New York State Office of Parks,
Education. Was it Education Department?
is SHPO, okay, so that's Parks and Recreation.
Yeah.
The State Historic Preservation
There you
Office, SHPO. These acronyms. Written confirmation that the New York State Historic Preservation Office concludes no effect on historic resources,
Or archaeological, yeah.
historic or archaeological.
And we want that from Steve?
Yeah, if you guys can provide it for the record. And then we'll say, it is further resolved that the ZBA authorizes the ZBA chairwoman to sign the final plat
Once it's-
following satisfaction of condition number 2, so that it can be filed in the Albany County Clerk's office. It is further resolved that the ZBA hereby authorizes and requires the ZBA chair and the ZBA secretary, clerk, and village attorney to take the appropriate steps to effectuate this resolution, including any filing and distribution requirements.
Could I then have a motion to approve with the conditions, the resolution for the subdivision?
So moved.
James? Second?
I'll second that.
Bob? Roll call, please.
Board Member Graham.
Approved.
Board Member Mulfeller.
Approved.
Board Member Sullivan.
Approved.
Board Member Witham.
Approved.
And Chairperson.
In favor. And just to clarify, this does not stop the applicant from subdividing and selling the property, the conditions that we set forth.
We will need to get this documentation for the record before the plat is submitted to you for
Final.
signature. Then they take that and go right to the county clerk's office and file.
Okay.
And I don't expect this is gonna be difficult to get.
And I'd just like to thank the applicant for getting all of the information. I know that was a lot of information that you had to provide us, but thank you for doing that. Okay. The only other thing we do have on the agenda is if there was any update on CM Fox subdivision, and both Gary has indicated that he has gotten nothing further on that. And that public hearing was closed the month before last.
Yeah, just to, I can give a little recap, Deb. So at the last meeting, the board did approve a negative declaration for the subdivision and approved area variances for the 4 keyhole lots. So the next step in the process is for the applicant to submit to the ZBA a preliminary plat to begin the subdivision review process. There were several representations made by the applicant during the proceedings on seeker and the area variance, where they said they would make certain changes to their preliminary plat to incorporate mitigation measures that had been recommended by our engineer, including some rain gardens and other stormwater treatment devices. So we have been in touch with the applicant's attorney and suggested that they set up a meeting directly with the village's engineer so he can communicate clearly to them what would need to be included on the preliminary plat maps that come in to address his recommendations. So once the village ZBA receives those preliminary plats, that will start the subdivision review process. And we do have a procedure in our local law for review of subdivisions that will require a new public hearing and also another referral to the county planning board. So there will be another review process once we get that plat in. It will basically be focused on the subdivision plat and the procedure for review that's in the village's subdivision regulations.
Thank you, Allison. Yeah, I haven't heard back from Brad. I know he sent another email. I don't know if he heard back from Steve or the attorney.
Yeah, I don't think, I hadn't heard anything since then, so we can check in. But, until the applicant submits that plat, the board wouldn't take any action to advance the application.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions on that on the board?
No?
Okay. Then the next topic on the agenda is to review the minutes from August 22nd, 2023. I don't know how it was in everybody else's packet, so I don't know what happened. But I had nothing, I know you weren't here, Ro. Do you know if Steve and the attorney reached out? I know Brad sent an email wanting to get together to discuss the concerns for, Troy's. So did you hear of anything, whether that's happened? I haven't heard back from Brad.
We did. Roe Andress, project manager for Walrath Surveying. Brad, myself, and the engineer met last week Thursday to walk the site and speak about some of Brad's concerns, and we're just waiting on the final comments from Brad to address them.
Final comments from,
From Brad.
Okay.
Yep. But that was last Thursday. We met on site.
thank you. Okay, so that was last Thursday. Okay, did anybody have anything else? Good job again, Ginger. That was a long one. Anything on the minutes?
No?
No? No? Eagle eye? No?
No?
Okay, then could I have a motion to approve the minutes from the August 22nd, 2023 meeting?
I make that motion.
Barb? Second, please?
I'll second that.
Bob, okay, roll call, please?
Board Member Freeman.
Approved.
Board Member Milfelder.
Approve.
Board Member Sullivan.
Approved?
Board Member Witham.
Approved.
Chairperson Hess.
Approved. The next ZBA meeting, if needed, will be October 24th, 2023, and after that, it would be November 28th, 2023. Of course, that's assuming we get whatever we need in by then, and we'll definitely let everyone know. Anybody have anything else, any other business that they want to discuss?
That'll be a public meeting, you said?
A public
Yes,
hearing, only if
yes,
something comes in
okay.
that warrants it. Okay, then could I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I make that motion.
Everybody's quick on that one. Second, please.
Second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Board Member Freeman.
Approved.
Board Member Wilhelmsen.
Approved.
Approved?
Approved.
In favor. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Wow, that was pretty good.
Good meeting, Deb.
Thank you, everyone. Hey.